Hello, everybody. Once again, it's me, Nancy Fortunato, Senior Paralegal at RISE. Today with me is Miriam from Bronx Defenders. And this is the second part to our review. This presentation is focused on New York State laws and policies. And remember that every child welfare rules are slightly different state by state, and we'll be talking about investigations.
So child welfare cases start with a report. The report can be made by anyone and it can be anonymous, but certain people are legally required to make a report if they think a child is at risk. They are called mandated reporters, and they're anyone that can include folks that work with children. So you can think social workers, doctors, teachers, daycare workers. All the reports are made to a 24-hour hotline. They're calls. And the 24-hour hotline is usually located at the state capitol. If the operator determines that there's some validity to the claim, then they'll send out information to the local Children's Services office to start an investigation. Once the local Children's Services office has the information, it has to investigate. The investigator, who will often introduce themselves as a child services caseworker, will meet with you, your children, and people in the community to gather information about you and your family.
So let's just stop for a moment. Before we continue, I just would like our viewers to use our tips to help them in this situation if they are going through something like this situation or similar to this situation. Tip number 1, speak to an attorney and a private advocate organization as soon as you learn, and I mean as soon as you learn that you are being investigated. Tip number 2, you don't have to let the investigator in your home without a court order. However, you may choose to do so if you feel that it's safe to do so. Tip number 3, ask how the allegations against you, ask about the allegations against you, and keep the conversations about those allegations. Again, keep the conversations about only those allegations. And remember, anything that you say can and it will be used against you. Our tip number 4, remain calm. Anger will make the investigator see you as a threat. And try to keep your children calm, but we know that's not easy. Our tip number 5, take notes about everything, and I mean everything. During the meeting, after, write down the caseworker's name, number, their supervisors, the concern they had about you, and everything else that you can remember.
So, one of the things that we talked about before is that an investigator will come to speak with you and your family. If you refuse an investigator entry into your home, you may create suspicion. Right or wrong, they may wonder, what is this parent hiding? If they return with a court order, you have to open the door. In worst case scenario, the investigator can do an emergency removal of your children at any time if they determine that your children are at imminent risk of harm, and they can go get a court order afterwards. So you may decide to let the investigator in to show that all is okay, or it may not be a good time for you and your family, and you can ask the investigator to come back at a later time.
Again, you have the right to exercise your right and not letting them in. However, that's not going to stop them from trying to come in the next time. But as soon as you learn, and I mean as soon as you learn, contact a lawyer, contact an advocate, contact anyone that knows about the child welfare system that can help you navigate the system and help you advocate for you and your family. Now, every investigator does their job slightly different because every case is different. But here are a few things that parent at RISE have experienced during the investigation that we feel you should know about and prepare yourself for. The investigator may want to confirm that you have food in your kitchen, electricity, beds for your children, and other basic needs. The investigator may want to check your child's body and to confirm they are without any marks or any bruises. The investigator may want to know or want to speak to your child privately. In some cases, the law does allow them to do so. The investigator may want to ask you personal questions about your lifestyle, including but not limited to maybe your mental health status, any drug use, your family court history, or your parenting style.
So I want to go back to tip number 3 that Nancy mentioned just a little while ago. Ask to know the investigations against you and keep the conversations to those allegations. If the allegations are about educational neglect, for example, stick to the subject. Your romantic life, drug use, mental health, any things of that nature should not be the focus. Remember that anything that you say can and will be used against you in later proceedings or at later conferences that may take place. Also, we can't reiterate enough, reach out to a parent advocacy organization or a lawyer. If you're in New York, reach out to a lawyer if you can afford one, or if you're in New York City specifically, there are parent defense organizations that we'll link to at the end of this that you can reach out to ask questions. Going through this process, having the support of folks who have navigated the system before is very helpful. So again, keep the conversations to the allegations, to what the investigator is in your home to investigate.
Well, I want to say hello to everybody that's watching us today at Facebook Live here at Rise, and we will continue. And some other questions that we see, we will try to answer them to the best of our ability. So, investigators have 60 days to complete the process, although they can, and they will, try to get enough information before those 60 days. It can feel very stressful for someone to be popping in and out of your home, and it also can be triggering and traumatizing. And we are fully aware of that. Parents are extremely protective of their child, who they love. They want the very best for their children. When someone says that you're a bad parent or can take your child from in an instant, it can be triggering, but it also can make you feel powerless. Powerless to fight for your family, powerless to advocate for them, powerless to fight a system that is bigger than you and I. Especially if the police is involved. Remember tip number 4, remain calm. That's going to be very hard to do, but please move over that, because anger will make the investigator see you as a threat. And please do anything you can to keep your children calm as well.
So an investigation can have 2 outcomes. It can either be determined to be founded or unfounded. There are concerns, which is founded, or there aren't concerns, which is unfounded. If there are concerns, you may be asked to attend a child safety conference. Important decisions are made at this conference, like whether to remove your children, whether or not to file a petition against you in family court, or whether or not to put in services. And this conference will be held with or without you. It's held at a local children's service office. In attendance will be the investigator, their supervisor, and other caseworkers. In New York City, you should have a parent advocate in the conference. If someone's not there, you can ask for a parent advocate to be present. Also, at the Child Safety Conference, you have the right to bring family members and other supports for you. Again, in New York City, there's parent advocacy organizations that you can reach out to that they can provide you with resources and more information. As Nancy has said throughout this presentation, it is very, very, very important to reach out to a lawyer, parent defense organization, parent advocacy organization, because navigating this process with help is the best, because it can be overwhelming. You should always try to reach out to a lawyer that represents parents and parent advocates before attending the Child Safety Conference. Now, do you want to?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So while you're in this Child Safety Conference, remember, stick to the allegations only and get the services that is about the allegations and nothing else. And if you feel that you don't have enough knowledge to advocate for yourself, that is why you have a parent advocate who will be sitting like this to advocate for you, guide you in the right direction, even provide you resources, and help you and your family to navigate the system that can be very stressful.
And just to add, so you, in this Child Safety Conference, you will be negotiating, and you should negotiate a service plan, just as Nancy is talking about. You need to negotiate the service plan so that it works for you and your family. So that means making sure that the services, which are voluntary, I know it doesn't always feel voluntary because the Child Services Agency may say, do the service or we'll take your kids. But you should make sure that the services are ones that you feel comfortable with, are ones that apply to the concerns that the Child Welfare Agency has. So if it's an ed neglect case, you shouldn't be doing a drug treatment program. You should also make sure that the services are in your language, work with your schedule and your children's schedule, and are also services that works for you. The services are not required until a judge mandates them.
Absolutely. And once again, when you're in this child safety conference, try to remain calm. Because if you kind of blow up in there and start cursing up a storm, automatically they're going to feel that you cannot parent your children. And of course, it's not about them, it's about you, your life, and your children. So, next question. Parents at Rise know what it's like to be investigated and in family court. Many of us felt that we didn't have enough information while we was going through it ourselves. Many of us felt afraid for our children, angry, stressed, and alone. But I want to let you know that you're not alone. Rise have a wealth of information and resources. So this is our magazine, Rise website. And inside there, you're going to find so much information about the Child Safety Conference, about tips of visits, about lawyers, about attorneys, anything that you need to help you navigate the system and empower yourself and to help keep the family together whenever possible. So now we will take some questions for our Facebook viewers. Some of the questions were already sent to us in advance and we wrote them down. We're going to try to answer them to the best of our ability. So question number 1. How do I get a lawyer doing an investigation?
So this is easier said than done. There are no states in the United States that provide free legal representation before the case gets to court, so during the investigation stage. You should contact the local public defender's office to see what, if any, sort of support you can get during the investigative stage. If you're located in New York City, there are several parent advocacy organizations that you can reach out to for information and support throughout the investigation process. And finally, if you do have the funds to be able to hire a lawyer during the investigation stage, and of course a lawyer that represents parents, that's helpful as well.
Absolutely. Question number 2. Do the police come during the investigation, and what are my rights in that situation?
So generally the police don't come during an investigation, but recently this is something that we have been seeing more often in New York, where investigators are coming accompanied with police officers. The rights that you have with respect to the police apply even when they're coming with with child protective workers. So, for example, you have the right to ask the police officer, do you have a warrant to enter my home? Why are you here? What information are you seeking? If the police don't have a warrant, you have a right to deny them entry into your home. You can also ask for the caseworker. You could say, you can come in to talk to me, but I do not want the police in my home. As we've said throughout this is a lot to deal with, and you know best the circumstances of your home and whether or not you feel like it's the right time for a caseworker or for the police to come in. But if the police don't have a warrant, you do have a right to deny them entry to your home under most circumstances.
Yes. However, we know that in this situation, it's not easy. And sometimes things don't work out like that. And if you feel in your gut that something's not right and you feel maybe you should not have them in your home at that moment of time, you could use your rights to do so. However, that will not stop them from coming back again, but it will give you the chance to call a lawyer or an advocate or get information to how to navigate the system for yourself and for your family before they come back again.
Exactly.
So, question number 3. Are conversations with investigators confidential?
So this is really important. They are not confidential. You may be told by the investigator or the worker that the conversations are private, but those conversations don't stay between the two of you. The investigator is taking notes on everything, and those notes are going to be shared with supervisors and possibly attorneys and possibly used against you in further meetings or in court. So when you speak to a caseworker or an investigator, you should know, as we've been saying, that everything that you say can and will be used against you at a later time.
And please, stick to the allegations. Don't be talking about, oh, my boyfriend, or I got a hold, or I'm about to get kicked out of my house. Stick to the allegations, please. Okay, question number 4.
Yes.
Are service mandated? And what do you mean when you say, or when we say negotiate a good service plan?
So services are not mandated until a judge says that you have to engage in services. So if there has not been a case filed in court, you're not legally required to do anything. Now, we know in reality, when you are talking to an investigator and they say that you have to do the service or we're going to take your kids, that feels very much like it's required. And we understand that. So what we mean when we say negotiate your service plan is that you should remember to focus on, as Nancy has said many times, focus on the allegations and make sure that those services are tailored to the allegations and also that they work with your family. You should not be having to quit a job. You shouldn't have your kids being late to school or miss school or doing things that aren't helpful or comfortable for you and your family. The whole child welfare services, they have to be mindful of the needs of you and your family as well.
And again, if you're going to do services, make sure it's based on the allegations. Talk to your lawyers so they could come up with a service plan that fits your needs and present that plan to the judge. So, tip number 5, what is the difference between a worker and an investigator?
This is a great question. A lot of folks have many different caseworkers in their lives. You have caseworkers for housing, for benefits, for your job, for your children's school. The key point here is that an investigator will work with a child protective agency and they'll be coming to your home to gather information about that call that was made to the hotline, alleging either abuse or neglect. So this person will be here to gather information. The way that you know if someone is a caseworker or is an investigator for a child welfare agency is to ask questions. Ask what that person is here to do, what they are investigating, who do you work for, what is your phone number, what's your name, what's your supervisor's name and number. Get as much information as possible so it's clear who is someone that's a caseworker that's providing you a service versus an investigator that's investigating your family from the child welfare system.
And please take out the pen and the paper and write notes about all the conversations that you had with this investigator. Let me ask you one more thing. What is the difference between a caseworker and a social worker?
The difference, so sometimes there's overlap between caseworkers and social workers, but the important thing to understand is that caseworkers for the child welfare agency are not always social workers. The people that come to your house to investigate, in fact, are most often not social workers, meaning they have not gone to school and studied social work and gotten a social work degree. Rather, they're individuals who are there to gather information about you and your family to make a determination about how the child welfare proceeding is going to move forward. So there can be some caseworkers that are social workers, but for the most part, child welfare caseworkers are not social workers.
Again, educate yourself. Educate yourself, advocate for yourself, and if you cannot advocate for yourself, find someone who can help you to advocate and navigate the system. Our last question. What do you mean? What do you mean about, do I have the right to be in the room when the investigators come in and ask that they want to speak to my child alone or kind of check their body or see if there's any marks? And what happens if my child has autism and doesn't like to be touched and don't want to talk to strangers? What can I do in that situation?
That's a great question. First and foremost, when an investigator comes to your home, you can certainly refuse the investigator the ability to speak with your child. And you can give a reason for that or not. But you do have the right as a parent to say, no, you cannot speak with my child. It's important to remember that by denying the investigator the right to speak with your child can create suspicion, right or wrong. But that is your right as a parent. Investigators also, though, have the ability to go to your children's school and daycare to speak with them privately there. You do not have the right to stop this from happening. Investigators are allowed to speak to your children privately in other settings such as schools and daycares. So the important thing, I think, that if an investigator comes to your home and asks to speak with your child, and you know that that may be a triggering situation for your child, if he or she is shy or has a developmental disability, it's important to tell the worker that and say, you know, I don't feel comfortable with you speaking with my child. My child doesn't do well with strangers. You know, you can talk to him here with me, or you can talk to her here with me, or I can show you his or her body. Giving alternatives to the worker is helpful.
Again, you are the one that knows your family better than anybody else. You have every right to advocate for yourself and your family and keep them safe. So we are coming to the end of the video. We know that was a wealth of information, and I advise you to revisit the video, take notes, use this video as a tool to navigate the system and to power you and your family. Thank you so much, and be safe.
Thank
Bye-bye
you.
now.
Bye.